Tell me about those scary moments in life when you suddenly realized, I gotta get the hell out of here, right now. I was hanging out in the local park with my sister. We got there around 3 p.m. and just wandered around until about 9 or 9:30, when we spotted 3 guys on the other side all wearing the same clothes. I noticed them right away but didn't think much of it. We kept walking for another minute or two and then I saw one of them stop and stare right at us. I got a bad gut feeling and told my sister we needed to split. She totally got it and we hauled ass out of there. Later that night, the news broke an emergency alert about a stabbing in the park, and the suspects were those exact 3 guys we'd seen. About 20 years ago, back when I was a teen, I was biking home from my buddy's place. We'd totally lost track of time and hung out way too late, so I was riding back after dark. I lived maybe a couple kilometers from his house. I'm turning onto one of the roads that leads home when I suddenly get this weird vibe. I look over my shoulder and see headlights. Some car stops at the intersection and slowly turns onto the road I'm on. There are practically no houses along that stretch. No streetlights, nothing. The second they turned in, I tore off into the woods and hid way off the road. The car slowed down, cruised past me and kept going. I have no idea what they wanted, but I had zero interest in sticking around to find out. About a year ago, our state got smacked by Hurricane Florence. We'd planned to spend the day up on some hill, figured the winds wouldn't be bad there, and we were pretty much tuning out all the news alerts. But the night before the storm, I got this massive knot in my stomach and started begging my dad to drive over to my sister's place a couple hours inland. We even argued about it, but I finally wore him down. When we came back a week later, a tree had crashed onto our house and the whole place was flooded. Turns out a tornado spun up in the woods behind us and dropped that tree right on the roof. Ever since then, I always trust my gut, no matter how crazy it sounds. When I was a little kid, some random dude walked up and asked me how to get somewhere. I started giving him directions, then noticed a van rolling up with the side door already open. I took off like lightning and never looked back. I was at this random house party and the hosts suddenly told everyone we had to keep hanging out in the basement. They were smiling, but the way they said it was aggressive. Most of my crew and I bailed right away, but one buddy decided to stick around. They ended up robbing him. A few years back, my boyfriend ran his own tire repair business. One day, he swung by a customer's house unannounced to pick up a check. They owed him a pretty big chunk of cash. When he came out, he was visibly rattled. He said the place was crawling with the guy's brothers. Totally out of the ordinary, and everyone was acting super sketchy. They still wrote the check, but basically hustled him out the door. He had this uneasy feeling the rest of the day. 2 days later, that customer and his brothers got busted for a murder they'd committed the night before we showed up. One time, my buddy and I went camping deep in the woods. The sites were super spread out, and ours wasn't set up with basics, so we ran into town for supplies. On the way back, we passed this guy on the trail. Total stranger, but he stared at us like he hated our guts. Gave me instant heebie-jeebies. When we get back to camp, our stuff is trashed, bags dumped, clothes everywhere. 2 hunting knives and a few other things are gone. The trail dead ends at our site, so it had to be that guy. We hop in the car and head back to where we saw him. He's vanished. We drive on and find a group of hikers. We ask if they've seen anyone like him, and they just stare at us in dead silence. The vibe is off, so I whisper to my friend, "Let's bounce." Heading back to the car, we spot our clothes behind a fence and grab them fast. Still no knives. All I can think is that guy's out there somewhere with them. We jumped in the car and tore out of there. No way we were staying overnight in that place. It was around 2 a.m. and we were passed out in our top floor apartment when the fire alarm suddenly blared. It was late. We really didn't feel like moving, so at first we thought it was a false alarm, until I noticed smoke creeping in under the door. Just thinking about what might be waiting outside was terrifying. We tore down the stairs as fast as we could, choking on the fumes and barely able to see where we were going. Hands down, one of the scariest moments I'll never forget. I was out at a bar in Sydney having a few drinks with my buddies when 2 dudes walked by. I accidentally locked eyes with one of them. He pulled a gun, pointed it right at me, and jerked his chin toward the door. I got the message real quick. Back in freshman year, I rolled into this party that had some sketchy dudes hanging around. The vibe kept getting more and more tense. No fights yet, just bad energy. Once it got late, I could tell something was about to go down. I told my buddy we should dip. Sure enough, less than 5 minutes after we bailed, some guy got stabbed and the dude who did it got shot. So, right after the car got jacked, we filed a report. A couple of nights later, dead of night, I hear pounding on the door. "Police, open up!" I still had that story about fake cop robberies in my head, so I kept quiet. I scooped up the kids and stashed them in the room with the window that leads onto the roof, then called 911 and said, "2 guys are at my door claiming they're cops." Dispatcher goes, "There aren't any officers in your area. We're sending a unit now." Long story short, it was the same dudes who stole the car. For whatever reason, they came back and actually returned it, drove it right to my place. I was on vacation walking through this nature reserve that was shaped like a giant crater. There's a skinny trail right along the rim that winds almost all the way to the bottom. My gut was yelling, "Nope, not climbing down there." Later that same day, I found out a woman got killed when some kids up top started chucking rocks and branches and a heavy one nailed her. I was babysitting when I suddenly heard someone scraping metal against the window. I shoved the kids in the closet and called the cops right away. A little longer and we probably would have been robbed, or something even worse. The way you jumped into action so fast probably saved a bunch of lives. Awesome job. I was walking down this long stretch of road, nothing around but a cemetery, when a van with 2 guys pulled up and offered me a ride. End of the 90s, hitchhiking wasn't exactly normal or legal. I told them, "Thanks, but I'm basically home already." They wouldn't drop it. They crept along behind me with the windows down, calling, "Come on man, just hop in." All of a sudden, they stop and start getting out. I'm just a teenager. They're in their 20s. I'm like, "Nope, time to bolt." I sprinted about a kilometer, ducked into the first alley and hid behind the nearest building. Sat there for 15 minutes making sure they'd taken off and weren't still watching me. Then finally headed home. I was on a second date with this guy. He had to swing by his place and asked me in. He was hot, but something felt off. His house was gorgeous, yet eerily spotless. Bare walls, empty shelves. When I asked how long he'd lived there, he just said 5 years. From the kitchen, he yelled for me to grab his keys from the top dresser drawer. A chill hit me, so I edged toward the door. He asked again. I joked, "Nah dude, I'm starving. Let's get food." After a third irritated request, I cranked up the ditzy act. He snapped. I stepped outside and walked down the sidewalk, making him follow. At his car, I insisted he drive me home. He agreed. Silent ride. Outside my building, he grabbed my face, bit my lip, then slid a hand under my shirt and pinched my nipple. I shoved him and bolted while he laughed. Bruised, lip split, and terrified he knows where I live. Pretty sure I dodged a serial killer. So there we are on this hike, right? I spot a bear cub up ahead, do a slow 180, and speed walk the heck out of there. No way I'm getting turned into lunch. Had to yank my buddy along by the scruff because he had no idea why we just flipped around and started booking it back the way we came. One time, Grandma and I were driving down the mountain when a bear cub dashed out and parked itself in the middle of the road just staring at us. Grandma slammed the brakes and we sat there. After like 5 minutes, the little guy finally wandered off, but Grandma still wouldn't move. I'm like, "Why are we just sitting here?" She points at the side window and goes, "That's why." I look over and there's this huge mama bear lumbering after her kid. Dude, it was scary as hell. But at least we were in a car and could floor it if things got ugly. Thanks for watching. Drop a comment with your scariest had to bail right this second moment, and be sure to check out the rest of the awesome vids on our channel.